Hey the people, how you doing? So, today we have the camera review for the X60 Pro Plus. Now I did make a very similar one for the OnePlus 9 Pro as well, do check that out. We really went kind of in depth into how good those cameras were and also who those were for. Now it's gonna be a very similar thing here as well, but there are a few key differences, like in the review itself. Because unlike the OnePlus 9 Pro, we're gonna be starting off with some unique features that this one's camera app provides. I kind of like the first one. It's Astro Mode. For those who don't know already, this is basically astrophotography on the X60 Pro Plus. And as you might know, astrophotography is quite a fantastic feature if you use it in the right occasion. So basically, this is a super hyped up night mode where you're gonna have to use a tripod and it's gonna take quite a long exposure, to say the very least, and the results are actually very nice. You know, obviously the night mode on this camera is fantastic, and if you use a tripod and take like a 2 maybe 3 minute long exposure, it's gonna be that much better. Now along the similar night mode lines, we also have long exposure. Now this one basically is there so that you can capture stuff like traffic trails, or maybe you wanna wave your phone's torch around while capturing a long exposure. That's essentially what it is, and it works fairly well if you ask me. Now you also have a very good Pro mode built in here. For photography you have access to all the lenses, and that's quite nice because the ultra wide angle lens on this one is a pretty fantastic one, and you can actually take raw images using that ultra wide lens, which is quite a bonus if you ask me. Now of course, I have to mention the night mode styles. Even though I did talk about it in almost, basically every single photography comparison I did for this device, night mode styles is still by far my favorite feature in any smartphone. Like, you know, a software feature that's just built in as an optional. This feature has blown my mind in almost any situation, and it's simply because I love the stylized look of images that you can get using the night mode styles. Plus, you know, the bonus is that you can actually get the best possible picture quality because of night mode. And to be honest, there's like a slew of options. There's black and gold, blue eyes, teal and orange, dark red, which is by the way my favorite right now. I've shown it off in numerous comparisons, and I'll also throw in some samples here. But essentially, night mode styles, I doubt there's gonna be any other feature that can outshine this one. Like, it's very close to my heart. You know, right beside night mode you have high resolution, at least that's how it came by default, and you know, you have quite a few options here. Basically you have 50 megapixels from the main camera, and you can go to 100 megapixels for some very odd reason, and I genuinely have no idea why we have 100 megapixels when 50 megapixels is, you know, the actual resolution of the main camera. You also obviously have the ultra wide camera with 48 megapixels here. It's a great sensor and it gives fairly nice and crisp images. There's also the 2x zoom with 32 megapixels here. Now the problem here is that, like in general with high resolution images that you take from the X60 Pro Plus, as far as I've seen, there is a fair dynamic range loss. Now why that happens, I'm not really sure. Because clearly taking 50 and 48 or 32 megapixel images should not be that taxing that, you know, HDR just takes such a big hit. Other than this one issue, photography on the X60 Pro Plus has been nailed really well. Like there's no two ways to say it, you know. Photography on this phone is so good that it leaves me impressed almost every single time I've used it. I think this phone is the only one that competes, and I can quite easily say it is on par in terms of photography only when compared to the S21 Ultra. Now that's a big deal because the S21 Ultra costs quite a bit more compared to this one. Obviously the S21 has other advantages, that's kind of expected. Vivo did focus a little too much on photography, but it will pay off depending on who's going to use the phone. You know, if you're really interested in photography, well then this is, like right now, middle of the video I can tell you, just go for this phone. But we'll still break it down, of course. So first and foremost, the colors from essentially all of the cameras here, they are so spot on and so accurate, it's almost scary. It's very natural while also, having a nice amount of contrast and punchiness to it. It somehow manages to nail the color tones while also giving us a good amount of vibrance to not make it look dull or flat. That's, I think, the best way to put it in terms of how the colors and contrast balance works on this phone, and honestly, it's one of my favorites. In numerous situations, I've actually preferred the colors on the X60 over many other devices. As for Hdr processing, as I said before, the normal Hdr processing on all of these cameras are very good, except for the high-res modes. That's the one place where it really lacks. Now, speaking of, the second area where it kind of lacks is with the Periscope zoom camera. Now, to be entirely clear, this phone has two zoom levels. First is the 2x zoom 32 megapixel camera. Fantastic. It's mostly there for portraits and when you want to use 2x zoom, of course. And next is the 5x zoom camera. It's just 8 megapixels. The sensor isn't particularly high quality. Like, you can immediately notice that, yeah, it's not all that good. The moment you take the image, you'll see it. The images come out like kind of soft, not very high quality. Like, it's really not all that good. I really hope that in the successor to this phone, the Periscope camera is improved. Like, just give us a better sensor. That's all I'm asking. So, other than the aforementioned issues that I mentioned, there isn't really much that stands out as a huge problem in terms of photography. And that's for good reason. Vivo focused on photos and they delivered. Speaking of, the night mode, I think overall, like just looking at the entire package that night mode provides, I think it's really good. It definitely has the best possible ultra-wide night mode that I've ever seen. There are two reasons for that. Firstly, the gimbal stabilization in here can allow you to take like 7 seconds of exposure without breaking a sweat. That's quite impressive if you ask me, because usually in other devices you might have to take maybe 2 or 3 samples until you can get an actually good photograph. That's really not the issue here, and you can just get an amazing jitter-free or blur-free photograph on the first chance itself. So it's really nice. Secondly, it's the processing. The night mode really takes advantage of the ultra-wide camera and the stabilization in there, and it can produce some really nice photographs. Like, I'm comparing this to devices like the OnePlus 9 Pro, which have similarly amazing sensors, but because it has the gimbal stabilization and the software processing to accompany it, the night mode is better on this one. And that's, I think, the reason why almost no other camera can come close to the ultra-wide night mode here. That's not to say the normal night mode is bad or anything. That's still really good. And, overall, it's just an amazing package. Like, there's nothing to complain about. There's only praises that I can throw around here, especially for the ultra-wide camera here. And yeah, one complaint that I do remember is that the selfie night mode isn't very good. It smooths things out a little too much, so I think that's one place where Vivo should upgrade. Now, speaking of selfies, let's talk about human subjects. That includes portraits, selfies, all the good stuff. Portraits, I'm personally not the biggest fan because I prefer more saturated skin tones. But if you think about it objectively, then Vivo has actually done an admirable job here. I'm talking about Hdr processing, details, the contrast balance. It's all really good. And compared to other cameras like the S21 Ultra or the iPhone 12, it stacks up really well. Obviously, skin tones are personal preference, so I'm gonna leave that to you guys. If you prefer the look of the X60, then by all means go for it, because the other parameters that do not depend too much on personal preference, they have been nailed here. So, photos, yeah. You're gonna enjoy your time when you use this, and you're gonna get amazing results, just across the board. There are certain complaints here and there, but still, this is a very good photography camera. On videos, that's not really the case. It's obvious. Vivo spent a lot of time refining photography and they did a great job. They delivered, but they definitely cut out a little in terms of video. So firstly, selfie video is not good. It's basically in the same ballpark as OnePlus 9 Pro with 1080p30, not so good looking video. So that's definitely one place you're gonna lose out on. As for the rear cameras, we do get fairly good 4K 30, 4K 60 video across the board. The ultra-wide camera is very stable compared to many other cameras out there because of gimbal stabilization, obviously. And the main camera can do very good and detailed video, but the Hdr processing with highlights and shadows, it's a little finicky. You know, sometimes highlights get blown out, shadows get crushed. The exposure isn't very well balanced all the time. If you go for a more even lighting situation, then the video from the Vivo is actually quite good compared to many other flagships out there. So yeah, depending on your use case, you're probably gonna get fairly good results, but you know, it's just a fair warning. Video isn't all that well refined here, so don't expect too much from it. I mean, this one also has 8K on the main camera, but it has no stabilization, so you're not exactly going to be able to walk around while shooting 8K. That's basically what I'm trying to say here. It's usable, definitely, but at least compared to how good the photos are from this phone, it doesn't even come close almost. So overall, I'm pretty impressed with the Vivo here. I expected the photography to be good and the videos to lack a little, and that is exactly how the Vivo performed. So adjust your expectations in that manner. If you want great photography at like a lower price tag than, let's say, the S21 Ultra, then this is the perfect phone to go for. But if you're expecting the Vivo X60 Pro Plus to deliver in terms of video and give you flagship grade video, then it's not a great idea. And I don't believe I mentioned this, but focusing is also not a very strong suit for the Vivo, especially in video. So overall, it's a great photography camera, and if you're looking for video, don't get this one. It's not gonna impress you at all. So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, do hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will be seeing you guys later. Cheers.